All right. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to Expert Session number 88. Amazing. And today we're going to discuss why category design decides who wins. Category design is a topic I enjoy very much. Our guest today is Brendan Hughes. He's a growth and go-to-market strategist working with B2B, European B2B, and e-commerce scale-ups. He has led commercial operations in SaaS and e-commerce support firms, and today helps founders build scalable, value-driven businesses. In his writing, including his books, he argues that success depends less on incremental improvements and more on defining a unique value narrative. He believes businesses should aim to shape what customers expect, not just meet existing expectations. Um, First, before we start, just thanks to our sponsors, VTEX, the commerce platform powering global retail experiences, eDesk, AI customer support solution for e-commerce teams, PagBank, Brazilian fintech offering payments and financial services, and our Meet, of course, the platform enabling our global, virtual, and hybrid events. Um, Brendan, I always start with a controversial question. And the controversial question for you is most companies fight to be the best in an existing market.
Mm,
Isn't that the fastest route to being a commodity?
absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to share screen, Carlos, and
Sure.
have some
Go ahead.
talking points, if that's okay.
Mhm.
And because
Yeah, of course.
let me uh, jump in here, and obviously the conversation is a conversation, so bear with me. But yeah, so this is where very many companies are, right? They're in
Mhm.
what we all kind of call as kind of red oceans. And if you're creating a product or a service and you already have a very competitive marketplace, then what many companies will try and do is be better, smarter, faster than whoever else is already there. And I've just, giving you some examples of um, all of the different alternatives to Zendesk as obviously the market leader in a category. And obviously, when you're in market leader position and you have 60 or 70% of the market, then that's the great place to be. But if you're everybody else in that market and you're on any of these lists of alternatives to Zendesk, then that's a very hard place to be. And what most of those, and I've been in this space for a while, what most of them are pitching is we're faster, smarter, better than Zendesk. But ultimately, Zendesk is the market leader and it's the go-to. So um, staying there is a very hard place, very expensive place
Mhm.
to be, and for a couple of reasons. So you might want to compete on features, and that's a kind of a death spiral, so a never-ending kind of race to build more features that do something slightly different or better, faster, smarter, and you end up with a very kind of busy product kind of team trying to outcompete with we've got the coolest, latest thing that these other guys don't have. But where really the core value of, let's say, a Zendesk is what it does, and that's
Mhm.
90% of the reason why people buy that product. You definitely don't want to be competing on price, I'd suggest, because
Mhm.
the bigger guy will always have more capacity to kind of price cut you or to undercut you. And really, is that where you want to grow your business and make margin on price? We'll come back to kind of price economics a little bit when we talk about some of the examples. Or you could, and I've seen companies try to compete on messaging, and it's we are the funniest, coolest, advertising, marketing kind of messaging, but it's kind of expensive if you are not well differentiated and you're just competing on your brand persona and personality. That's really hard. So obviously the core message is that breakout companies, and we look at some of these, um, uh, they're not actually competing head to head, or they're definitely trying not to compete head to head. They're redefining the market, not just how they compete against kind of 50 kind of other companies, or a market leader who typically has 60 to 70% of the market.
And the question then for you is, it's not a controversial question, because we're having a conversation just before we started here, and it's very nice. We have Vinny, who just joined, Hendrik,
Thanks, Vinny, yeah.
Dalia. I mean, just amazing people, and I love you all. You guys are amazing. The conversation about being different, and how do you then craft a narrative where you're different from everyone else? Because I believe I'm such a big believer that, of course, you need to deliver value, but if you're able to first craft the narrative where you're different, and then of course you're ballsy, you have the courage to say I'm different, and show it why you're different. So what's your best advice there to for companies, regardless what they do? Like, it's really interesting. You have this book where you talk about Ryanair, what they've done. So yeah.
So let me tell you the Ryanair story, and it's one I think that everybody in Europe is familiar with. I doubt if there's anyone in Europe who hasn't flown a Ryanair flight, whether they want to or not. It's now the largest airline in Europe. I think they're flying about 200 million kind of passengers per annum, which is, if you think about 25, 30 years ago, it was actually going broke. It was losing £10 for every passenger that it flew. And I'm obviously in Ireland, you can tell from my accent, and it's an Irish company founded by a guy called Tony Ryan. He had his son involved, a guy called Dec Ryan. And where this started for me was last November, kind of a year ago. I was on a business trip to London for an e-commerce event that was taking place in London, and I was standing in the stairwell of Dublin Airport. It was we call it lashing rain. It was a really wet, dark night, and I was about to dash across the tarmac to get onto the Ryanair flight. Okay, and actually I had a really busy year. Vinny knows we were in New York at NRF, and I'd been on all kinds of flights. I'd been on first class private jets. I'd done the whole thing in that 1 year. And again, I was on a business trip, and I was having this, what I was thinking was a horrendous experience. And for me, it was a little bit of a light bulb moment when we think about the Ryanair value proposition. And I had the opportunity to sit down with Dec Ryan, who was one of the early CEOs of Ryanair. And the success of the Ryanair model is that they do compete on price. They offer a low cost model. But when they were coming into the market, they had the vision to be a low cost airline. But the vision of the family who founded it, to Tony and his son Declan, was to be a full services, like to compete with British Airways or the Irish airline Aer Lingus. And we're going to be cheapest chips, but we're going to provide the same level of service that you expect. And that just didn't work. And the light bulb moment for them was they'd ordered a batch of, or they were thinking about ordering kind of the next set of planes, and they had been using Airbus, and then there was Boeing, right? And the light bulb moment for let's say the founding kind of teams was that actually Boeing for them was, they called it the Ford car, like equivalent, whereas Airbus was the Mercedes. And their head of engineering at the time said to them, look guys, we don't need a Mercedes, we need a Ford, because it's a great, obviously, airplane, the 737, and it works, it does everything we need. And in particular, the efficiencies, if we can lock into one type of plane that is anyway highly efficient, more so than the other. And it became a light bulb moment, and everything that happened after that decision to make that one kind of purchase decision, they became an obsession for them. And ultimately then Michael O'Leary, who was the the CFO in the business kind of stepped in as the CEO, and the rest is history. But the key phrase that I took away from that and what changed their model and how they differentiated was what they call asset utilization. So everything from like a pilot is allowed by law to fly 900 hours per month or per year, and they Ryanair get 800 hours out of them, right, on average, whereas every other airline gets about like 450 or 500 hours out. Like, so they're inefficient. Ryanair obsessed about the turnaround times on their airplanes. So, and still to this day, a Ryanair flight will land and 20 minutes later it'll take off again with a full load of passengers. And that's why they put you into the stairwell of the airplane. Oh, I'm sorry, and get you going to the tarmac, because it reduces the kind of turnaround time. And so everything that the Ryanair kind of model kind of talks about is about how you can be an airline and you can look like every other airline, but actually the way you behave and how you think differently about the market can actually be the route to success. So you might still be able to get from A to B on a Ryanair flight versus a British Airways flight or a Lufthansa flight, but actually the experience end to end, apart from the box that you're in, is completely different. So what they've done is carved out a niche in the markets. It's still an overall, I need to fly from A to B, but they've really redefined, defined their own category, which is their low cost, no frills category, and that has unlocked air travel, democratized air travel for a whole segment of the market that never flew before, or used to take a train or a bus or whatever.
What common beliefs do you see in the founders you work with? And by the way, I think I didn't mention that you have a mastermind to go to market edge. You're also a fractional CRO. So you on a, I'd say, very regular basis, you're talking to other SaaS founders, which I believe there are common biases and beliefs that they have, whether it's in terms of pricing or looking at the competitor or whatever and whatnot. So would be interesting to hear your perspective on what are the common beliefs and mistakes that you see that they do.
There's a great book called No Bull SH*T Strategy, No Bull Strategy, that I think does a really good job on kind of articulating what successful startups, successful category designers or category creators, and it's shifting the mindset from trying to be the best in a category to being the only in a category. So, and I think and a lot of founders still try to be the best, and I would suggest that that's a mistake. That if you're trying to, again, you take Zendesk or Intercom or any of these, there's trying to enter a market where there's already an incumbent and you're going to suggest I can be better. That's very, very hard, right? And is a route to failure. So I think when we think about category design, then it's about trying to create a space where you are the only, right? You are the only one, and we call it a defensible moat, or we can call it lots of things, right? But it's something that you can do that nobody else can do, or that will be hard for them to replicate. And there are, let me go through the 5 steps, and then maybe we can have a chat about, like, and this is, I guess, what I see. And also, you and I have chatted about Christopher Lockhead, I think, is a great person to kind of tune into. He's, like, I guess, the godfather of category design. And some of this is kind of his insights, but it's also things that I think we all see and know. So I'm probably going to say a lot of things that are obvious. But look, let's have the conversation and see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think the step one is refuse the comparison is what I'm saying. So we
Mm-hmm.
all know that Coca-Cola and Pepsi kind of invented around about the same time. And again, Chris Lockhead kind of is good on this. He says, every year in December, January, the VP of or CMO of marketing in Pepsi takes their whatever hundreds of millions in ads in advertising and marketing and says, he says Venmo, but we're going to revolute it across to the guys in Coke, right? Because their positioning forever has been, we taste better than Coke. When people take the taste test,
Mm-hmm.
Pepsi comes out better, etc. So all you're doing, and all they're doing when you pitch yourself against Coke, is you're reminding people that Coke exists, and you're saying, "Hey, go try Coke," right? Even though we're Pepsi, and that's just like not a space you want to play in, right? Now, Pepsi's still doing all right, but then you take Dr. Pepper, and this is a great story that people should look into kind of over its history. Actually invented around about the same time as kind of Coca-Cola, and they've spent 100 odd years saying we're not Coke, and we're not. Actually, they had a lawsuit in the 1970s when they got a ruling from whatever court in the US to say Dr. Pepper is not a Coca-Cola, right? And what that actually allowed them to do was a few things, but one was really critical, which is around distribution. So today, Dr. Pepper is bottled and distributed by the distributors of Coca-Cola and the distributors of Pepsi, right? So whereas in the States, primarily, I think probably globally, if you're a Coca-Cola distributor, you can't also distribute Pepsi, etc., right, for competitive reasons. So Dr. Pepper, and they had an ad campaign again, I think in the 80s, and all of their campaigns are saying we are in a market of our own. So one of their slogans was "Try more weird." Look, we are weird, we are different, we're not in the market. And I think in Europe, obviously, we're not that familiar with Dr. Pepper. We've kind of heard of it, etc. But actually, if you look at the market share, right, in 2024 of Coke is like 19.2% of this market is Coca-Cola. Pepsi is 8% and Dr. Pepper has 8.7%. So being different pays. I'm not saying Pepsi is a failure, but the opportunity to be different and to not try to be better, but to be different is kind of where I think the first part of the mindset needs to be when you're inventing a product. The way to, and again, Chris Lockhead and others will, and we all know this in the kind of startup world is, look, start with the problem. Of course, we always start with the problem. And the important part is to kind of to own the narrative around the problem, because if you can craft the narrative, right, craft the how you describe the problem, then the solution is your solution, right? Because everyone assumes, okay, well, you're the best at describing what the problem is, then you must have the solution. And this is just an example. Like I know people who rave about like solutions like shortwave. And shortwave, I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a tool that sits on top of your Gmail or your Outlook, right? And makes them better, right? Because we all know that email sucks. Like none of us want to be, and we've been probably 10, 15, 20 years dealing with email chains and things getting lost and all the rest. And everyone knows that email sucks. So these are some of the leading solutions that are in the market to make email better, right? And now adding layers of AI on top of your email, and it makes everything just work better, right? And that's fine, and they're doing fine. But then you take Slack, and Slack is probably 15 years old now, and they've answered a different problem, which is email collaborations, or sorry, employee collaboration sucks. How can we fix that? So in essence, superficially, we might say it's the same problem, because people were frustrated with email for how to interact with each other and with our partners, etc. And so one section of the market said, okay, let's see, can we make email better? And let's try and actually compete with Google and Microsoft to put a solution on top of their solution that makes it better. or somebody else came to the market and said, well, actually, let's just fix collaboration because that's the problem. And invented a whole new category, right, which is kind of instant messaging or messaging systems in an employee or a partner context. And Slack's, it was bought, and now its market cap is whatever, 25 billion or whatever, right? So, and these other guys are all kind of startups and probably doing well, but the opportunity for breakout growth is by asking a different question and solving and answering that question, right? So that's kind of step two, and stop me if none of this is making sense. Step three then is when you've asked a different question, and I love this concept, which again you probably everyone's heard of, which is, and let's just chat about it for a minute, but it's like, is normalizing the weird or weirding the normal, right? And what that means is that it's very hard to go to somebody with a product proposition and they have no context for it. So if you go to someone and say, I have this kind of widgeridoo, and this is, and you have to describe everything that it does, etc., right? So then they kind of, okay, well, what is that? Where does it fit? How do I use that? You know, what does it do for me? And what again, the category design kind of ecosystem would suggest is, frame yourself within a category, okay, but actually step outside it. So, for example, and we look at some examples of this. So is normalizing the weird is you're doing something quite strange, but actually you're going to piggyback on the back of a category, or you're in a category and now you're adding something strange into the category. So if we take like Ribena, like, so it was a kind of a fruit juice, right? That is, we all grew up with it as a cordial, right? So as a you add water to it, and you get it. It's a concentrated drink, right? And they were very much a household kind of like family product that was bought only in large bottles. And I guess the space that they were competing in was, okay, that's a very narrow category. So mom buys it and then adds a little bit to a glass and then adds water, and then it's kind of a fruit healthy drink for the family. And so what they did was they said, okay, so we are competing in the let's say the fizzy drink space. So in a consumable bottle of 500 mils or 750 mils, that's just going to be very strange for us to jump into that. But they did it, right? So they went from being kind of a weird player in the space and normalizing it by kind of packaging it up, etc., and positioning it as, it's 100% fruit, etc., right? And that was just kind of somewhat interesting at the time. And then I take the example of Innocent, right, which is kind of like, again, we're all familiar in kind of Western European markets around Innocent about 15 years ago, went from being a fruit, like a smoothies, and smoothies were very niche at the time, very expensive, and definitely you maybe bought them in cartons or whatever. And they went into the market and again, completely redefined the category, competing head to head with Ribena and the fizzy drink kind of sector. And we're able to extract, and I put in, this is the price from Tesco in the UK at the moment, which is like at the time even more so, like doubling the price they were able to charge per kind of milliliter of drink. And they built a whole brand around how they were different to the market, yet they were still in this, they still find them in the same space on the shelves beside in the fridge kind of category, beside kind of the fizzy drinks and the somewhat healthy kind of diluted drinks. And now in the last few years, there's a whole new kind of side category on this, which is in even smaller bottles, right? So you can buy these in 500 ml and kind of 750 ml bottles. And now in 100 ml bottles, there are what we call the kind of the health kind of shots, right? And these are, because there's problems with these markets, which is I've got to drink a lot of it, and it's Yeah, and it's yeah. But I've got to drink a lot, buy a lot, and it's a lot of hassle maybe to kind of just have and use it. Whereas this is essentially coming from a slightly different perspective, which is this is like vitamins and kind of like supplements and things that you might not otherwise kind of consume, such as ginger, which you buy in a health food store, and now they're on the shelves in supermarkets, etc. And what they've done is they've again taken a sidestep in the category and are able to get like 5-6x kind of value kind of from that. So even though you might start, and innocent being the kind of like the one we're all really familiar with, and is now kind of a stable category, in the aisles or in the fridges, there's still opportunity for others to come in and to redefine the category and create a new category. For someone to go head to head with innocent, that's going to be hard, right? But you can actually do something left field, come into the market and extract value kind of from the market. So there's redefining the market as a core. And I'll go through the next two very quickly, but just so we can get on to the conversation. This is my Ryanair experience when I was promoting kind of the launch of the book. Is I'm standing in the stairwell of on the way out to a plane, and everybody has to do that, or I'm on the tarmac in the rain or the wind or whatever. And there's a quote on the front of the book from Deck Ryan he says, if you go by Ryanair's rules, we're the best airline in the world. Right? So if you reset expectations from your customers, and this is what actually flying should be like, or this is how the rules of flying are, or this is what it means to fly today, then Ryanair delivers 100% on your expectations. But if your expectations is what you get from Lufthansa or British Airways or Aer Lingus or someone else, then you're going to be frustrated and annoyed, etc. So in the category that you're creating, you set the rules. And if you set the rules, then it's your game, right? Not somebody else's game. And kind of last thing I'll talk about is just kind of the value exchange. So again, think about Ryanair and the value exchange is like the reason we end up walking to the back end of an airport, the reason we queue in the stairwell, the reason we walk onto the tarmac is so that Ryanair can give us the value that which is low cost, on time flights to wherever we want to go. So there's a value exchange that is not just about money, but in the SaaS world, where everyone needs to think about is moving from seat-based and feature-based economics into outcome-based economics. So you're paying for the transformation and not the tool. So we all again are familiar with. So I worked in Edesk, and they're a sponsor of your group, and we have like Edesk, Intercom, Zendesk, Gorgeous are all moving towards value-based pricing, which is paying per resolution, paying per outcome, because that's the value exchange that they now need to provide, because AI is changing the game, because there'll be less seats there'll be less people working in this industry in the future, and actually AI can resolve 60 to 70% of outcomes. So if they didn't change their model to the outcomes that they deliver, which is, hey, we can resolve customer queries, ultimately they'll actually go broke because there's going to be less seats to sell, etc. So that's my rant on
No, it's amazing.
the
It's
topic. So yeah, happy
fascinating.
to chat about that.
Yeah, we have some very interesting people, and I would love if you could just join us instead of sending your questions. But if you prefer to write or type, it's up to all of you. But we have Luke. He comes from the SaaS industry. Hendrik, commerce analyst. Vinny, strategist. Dalia, she works in the world of brands. I don't think so much SaaS, but traditional brands. She's from Egypt, very, very experienced, amazing. So yeah, and one of the things that I like to perhaps pick your brain here, Brendan, is in the world of SaaS. I mean, in the world of CPGs, it's clear, it makes sense. you're different. You create a different story. You create a different, let's say, juice, and you
Mm.
position it differently. But in the world of SaaS or services, as we were
Yeah.
speaking, like we are, if we were in a library, where were we? Like we are in the category of, in a bookstore of networking and business transformation and whatever you call. But how can we be different? As in evolve, right? So that's the story that we've been working on for a long time. And I think in the world of SaaS, I don't know if folks tend to be more stiff or if it's because we are in our bubble, like in our
Mm.
LinkedIn bubble, and um, if folks tend to be more jargon orientated and they buy into whatever. I always talk about Gartner because I think they're full of shit, and Forrester and all of this
Yeah.
companies. They coin terms just so they can sell new reports, and that's a
Yeah.
business model that we spoke about it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
um, something's going to happen there. But in the world of SaaS, it's very hard for you to see companies working on outcomes rather than and being different, right?
Yeah.
So the question more I want to ask is like when you communicate, I think Shopify is doing this very well nowadays. Like you will see them. I was in London and I was like, wow, Shopify, you can see them nowadays in the bus outlets
Yeah.
um, or on the tube stations. Like you go to tube and they do it really well because regular people may not know what Shopify is, but then they associate their name with a store. And
Yeah.
then people, they start to connect. Oh, Shopify, they're in technology and they're powering this store. I didn't know about it. And so they are uh, perhaps redefining the way they tell a story about a tech company, which is also, in my opinion, a way to redefine your category because
Yeah.
traditionally SaaS companies they think they have to go to an event, and it's like, oh, we have to go to an event and have a booth, and I think it's boring. It tends to be
Yeah.
boring. Like people buy into these ideas, like, and so yeah, that's where I want to start.
Yeah. Okay. So look, a couple of things. So one, I think Shopify is a really great example of redefining the market, right, and not being in staying in the category. And the way you can listen to the founders, and they talk about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, and if you think of e-commerce, okay, but that feels a little bit uncomfortable, like in terms of, because e-commerce was like very much so around kind of when we first thought about it was about retail. And again, some of the people like Vinny on the call, like a lot of, if you wanted to build an e-commerce store, you needed developers, you needed an agency, you built on Magento or BigCommerce and all the rest. And this the speed to get to market, like, it was an investment and time and money and effort, right? And the where Shopify kind of stopped and didn't go down that route was that actually the persona that we want to serve is not that persona. There's a segment of the market that is different, and they're startup founders, right, essentially. And startup founders, it's a bit like startup founders today are doing vibe coding with AI, right? They were kind of that in 2012 or whenever it was founded, which was, I want to give startup founders a platform where they can just build this themselves, with some level of smarts, but not too much. And that's it. That was their whole, that was their switch on the market, and to this day has kind of stayed relatively true to that. So they identified that the ideal user of their platform was, uh, it was a different cohort, and you didn't, of course there are Shopify agencies and all the rest, like, so, but that was their mantra and their mission, and they continue to celebrate. That feels true in their storytelling, in their ethos, that they celebrate founders, they celebrate kind of, breakthrough growth, kind of with their founder community, etc. Um, so I think that's, I, I probably disagree with you actually, Carlos. I think it's, in software, I guess maybe because I'm in that space, I think it's obviously so much more important. And in services, again, Chris Lockheed, you introduced him to me, Lockhead, I think he calls it, Christopher Lockhead, and his company I think is called Category Pirates. So it's about this whole kind of philosophy. But he's very blunt. But you mentioned the Gartner earlier, and he has a line that I heard him quote, which is, yeah, if you make it into the Gartner quadrant, right, you're dead, right? It's like some people are paying to get there or trying, the damneds to get into the quadrant. But all that you're doing in that then is you're saying, yeah, we're playing the same game as everyone, and we're trying to get up to the top right-hand corner and be better than everyone. Vinny's on screen. Vinny, do you want to argue with me and tell me I'm full of crap? Because I'd love to hear that from you.
No, it's interesting. You've been in that SaaS world that Shopify occupied for quite a while, Brendan, and the position they've occupied is almost by accident, I think. Right, the messaging has been strong, but they've no CMO. Like they don't necessarily have a strategy around this. What's been effective for them is a community that's willing to distribute their message. And their message is usually 2 rollouts per year. Coupled with everything else. I mean, they were as vocal about their outage as they are about their marketing, which is to say not vocal at all. I mean, they deliver message, they move on from it, and they've got other people doing that work for them, and there's not many occupy the space in the way that they do. I would say that what's occurred in the platform market is a symptom of what you've talked about earlier, which was everything is the same, and there's no one trying to say really they're different. What they've tried to do is move into different categories, and they're not distinguishing themselves just by doing that, Brendan. Now, the one example I suppose that I worked on this year that I found interesting was Shopware, because they're a German platform, operate well in regulatory spaces and where compliance is a huge ask, and they now occupy the regulated industry in North America. That's what they're going after. They've said it. They're not vocal about it because the market won't allow that. If you're talking about, e-commerce for firearms, not many people want to put their hands up and say we operate in that industry, or for CBD oil. So I think that's really interesting. I love the idea and the principle of it all. I think the market has stagnated because of Shopify. I hold Shopify to account because it's a weird thing to say, but they brought pricing down for technology, and though they democratized technology, they also made it a fool's errand. Like if you're delivering an e-com platform for $50 a month effectively, it is a very difficult thing then to build a loyalty platform and charge $300 a month, because the association straight away is, well, I'm only paying 50 quid here, and I know that's not the true cost, but it becomes this low barrier to entry, and it's kind of killed the market, and as a result it's killed creativity, because if you're in the Shopify app market, you have to present your app in the same way as everybody else. 5 videos, 3 steps, tiered pricing, and it's a race to the bottom. And that commodification of everything is going to be a huge challenge as we go into next year. And Agentic, for all it's worth and not worth, will probably weed some of that out, for better or worse. It will rationalize the 46,000 app providers or whatever it is in the Shopify ecosystem, and will start forcing us to be a little bit different and start thinking where we want to be. And some of the commentary, I'll shut up now in a sec, coming out of Black Friday is maybe it's time you started investing in your brand in the long term. Like, stop thinking short-termism. If you've got runway to do it, start doing it. And I'd love culturally, Brendan, and you're closer to this than I am, I think founder culture has been as much of a curse as it has been a blessing. It's allowed people to be lazy, and I mean that with the greatest of respect. I think it's so easy now, in many respects, to set something up, to get it to market, to get funding into it, and then to be part of this ecosystem. It doesn't require you to think laterally in the way you did. The most interesting slide for me of what you put up was the innocent smoothie slide. I loved seeing the per 100 ml pricing structure of the shot versus the original juice, the Ribena. I just thought that was a brilliant summary of how taking the weird to market can really differentiate yourself. It was such a great slide. I loved it.
Good, thank you. Henrik, did you want to say something? You come on camera. We had a good chat a couple of weeks ago as well.
So I couldn't help but think while you were talking, Brendan, that all the companies you've mentioned today, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Ribena, Ryanair, and the like, they've had leadership that has been clear about their value proposition. One of the things that I couldn't help but notice in the last 12 months in my own little business is that there are very few SaaS businesses actually solving one problem really well. It's
Or any
actual
problem,
fact.
Andrew.
Huh?
Or any problem for that matter.
I was going to get, thank you for finishing my sentence for me, Vinny.
Sorry,
Much
dude.
appreciated. The point that I was going to get across is that I think the one thing that I think I'd be interested to hear your take on is, for me, one of the in a commerce space, one of the best companies that continues to evolve itself is Amazon, but it's culturally based in the sense that there's never a sense of we've made it. Let's continue to evolve and let's continue in offering more services, creating more line items that we can charge people to ensure that we can generate more money in more manners. The question that I have for you is that, do you think that the challenge that we should be talking about with the SaaS companies is that these companies don't communicate their value proposition well enough? So to Vinny's point, I know Ribena, I know all the companies except the smoothie company, but we have something similar in South Africa. So I understand that. But if you're a SaaS business, I always freak out when, somebody tells me I'm the Uber X of whatever, or I'm the Amazon of whatever. No, you're not. You're your own company with your own founders and stuff. So in my long-winded way, do you think the challenge that we should be speaking about more is that companies cannot communicate their value proposition in a few sentences rather than having 12 million text presentations and people having to finalize the deal? There, I said it.
Okay. So 100%, Henry. And maybe kind of tie the two pieces together then, Vinny. So many founders of SaaS companies, software companies, product companies, service companies as well, but very often they're product people, right? And I've been in a number of, so I worked hands-on, I still work hands-on inside of kind of product SaaS companies, and I've been around the edges of a few, and we kind of know a lot, obviously. And product people like building product, right? It's their passion, it's their creativity, it's what gets them out of bed in the morning and solving kind of new kind of problems. One of the behaviors I've seen repeated many times in product companies is the need to keep building more product, so more features, right? More add on more things. And meanwhile, we haven't properly communicated or demonstrated the core value, right? So I've been in companies where we know we got to fix the core value, the thing that delivers the core of what we do, but our product founder or the product team has said, actually, there's this cool shiny thing that we need to build and create. So it's why my latest book is called Sell Value, right? Don't stop selling features and talking about price, and actually talk about the value transformation. And one great example that I like to quote or talk about is in Edesk. Edesk is a customer service software that I know Vinny knows, and they sponsored this event. But I haven't worked there for kind of a year. But selling customer service software is hard in a cluttered market space with Zendesk, and Edesk's USP is like marketplace expansion. So they have 300 marketplaces integrated, but still it's hard, right? Because when you look at the product does what every other product does, but actually it has this unique thing. Okay, that's interesting. but you're selling into a CFO like a cost-saving solution because it's about making your team more efficient. And one of the hidden pieces of value that was in the product, but we never exposed, was actually about kind of whatever, I don't know, it depends on the client, but maybe 15 to 20% of customer service engagements are pre-sales. And actually a lot of like customer service queries are post-sale, but then the customer goes on and buys. And we never put our hands up or never empowered our end user, being the customer service manager, to understand the impact that the customer service software was having on revenue, right? And CEOs love to talk about revenue and things that drive revenue. So the product team took this as a challenge and actually exposed a data point in the product, which was service attributed revenue. Okay, so there was a customer service engagement, and within 30 days of that engagement, that customer went on and bought. Here's the number of orders that happened, and here's the revenue. And you change the conversation inside the organization, because you now give the customer service manager, think of what you do for them. They're the team in the corner who keeps saying, hey, why do we need 10 customer service people? Can we not automate all of that? Let's reduce the cost. And you then change the conversation. Hey, you guys were involved in like 15% of our sales last month. Can we do more of that? And I think that's the heart of the problem, Hendrik, which is one, understanding the downstream impacts you're having in a business. Finding a metric like revenue, or whatever it might be, or if you can measure time saving, or something you can measure, and then expose in the product. And Vinny knows me from my ad tech days. I think the ads industry is the master at doing this. They invented all of their own measures, ROAS, CPC, like cost per CPM. They made it all up, right? Honestly, they made it all up. And we all spend millions on attribution solutions trying to figure the stuff out, but they're marking their own homework. They're telling you the value they're giving you, and they're the only ones who can judge it. So
can I pick up on something there, Brendan? It's a great point. There's two things, and one, I think as an industry, we've got to set a new standard for where we want to be. And by that, I mean, we've meandered for 20 years on similar conversion rates and e-com being a percentage of total retail revenue. It tells us there's a problem. If we were looking at any other metric in the world, like instances of COVID or instances of polio, whatever the hell it was, there would be someone looking at that over time and saying, this is not a problem being solved. Is there a problem at all, right? So we're trying to move customer experience. So I think we're actually building the wrong technologies right now. I'm not saying I have the solution, but I don't believe we're building customer first experiences. I'll go to NRF in January. 99% of the floor will be there with unnecessary technologies. Never asked for. That's one side, and I'm not here to like rag on the industry. I think people have gone with best intentions to deliver on what we have. The second point is something that I've seen coming out of the Black Friday numbers, and it's the first time I've seen it, and I'm asking this openly to the table here, because I think it's the first step in a shift change, not a trend, but a shift change. Agentic commerce is now taking credit for the attribution funnel as we know it, being reported at a top level by Salesforce, by anyone that's reporting numbers, Adobe, Shopify. Is it the start of an erosion of e-commerce the way that we know it? Now, I'm asking you to think 10 years out, because attribution it's a mugs game, as you've just described, Brendan. Allocation really is probably the only thing that matters in managing your books on a monthly basis. But I wonder, are we at the very first precipice of the idea of commerce changing fundamentally from the way that we have known it for 20 years?
The answer is a resounding yes, and I don't even need to think about it. So one, just think about what happened.
There's a mole in our midst, so let's be careful what we say.
Oh, dude, just leave the mole in the garden alone.
I had to. I've been thinking like for 20 minutes.
I knew you were going to do that. Thank you. You've made everybody's day on the call, because now everybody can laugh at me. Thanks.
Disappointed
The
no one
point
else
I
did
was
it.
going to say is that just think about the following. On the last earnings call from Amazon, we had Andy Jassy saying that Rufus has generated $10 billion of annualized value. What does that mean? I do not know.
No.
Secondly, every reporting company on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and all of these things are telling us that, as you mentioned, Vinny, that this is a big deal. I think what we are going to start seeing in the next 12 months, and it's almost like we were reading my mind from 20,000 miles away, Vinny, is that I think we are going to be seeing in the next 12 months every LLM-based service provider coming into the commerce world and saying, we are able to lift your conversion metrics by 5 basis points to 50x if you use our service. The reason why I think this is that, think about it. These companies have raised billions of dollars, are looking for product market fit in most cases. We have for years, or at least I have for years, heard brands say that, our online marketing leads to so many footfall in our stores. We are now going one step down where we are saying that agentic commerce is going to qualify and lead to better conversions in e-commerce, which, let's be honest here for a minute, the marketing platforms have, due to regulation and technology, have become inefficient. They've become expensive. But this is the cycle. The cycle, we see this every now and then. It's to Brendan's early point, in the sense that, why would anybody want to be compared against, digital advertising? No, we don't, because we want to take a percentage of the money, yes, but we want to be able to tell people in e-commerce that if you use our services, then you will see better conversion rates. And I think we are going to see more and more versions of EBITDA and, all the funny stuff in earnings calls where people make up their own metrics because of this very thing, because the conversion is getting better due to a robot being part of it. So, in my long-winded way, I think you're onto something too. I think Brandon's point about the ad sector basically doing their own, creating their own homework, doing the own homework, marking the own homework, and then telling us all how good the homework is. This is exactly what they need, because advertising, in a sense, has become inefficient. I'm just thinking out loud here, just by the way.
Very good, Brendan.
Yeah.
If you have any answers to Vinny's question and to Hendrik's remarks.
Yeah. So again, I think the actually I'll summarize what I think is happening. Let's talk about SaaS. I was saying this to Carlos at the start. So actually I'll share my last two slides again. So because I think I'd love let me share this, but I'll go back a step or two. Just to leave you with this thought, right? So on SaaS, because what kind of space I'm in, somewhere around, I'm generally around the e-commerce or ad space for the last number of years. But I think the subscription economy, so Adobe Creative Cloud was really the big leader that went from like software like you bought software and you bought a license for life, and then it moved into like kind of the into the cloud and recurring. And I think we all understand that model is kind of dead, right? So market cap of Adobe is halved almost this year so far, right? And for all the reasons we know, it's particularly driven by AI, right? Because of the inefficiencies of the model. But the point I want to get into is that I think we're in the value economy is the new economy, and I think resonates with everything we've been saying, which is one, we monetize transformation, but I think more interestingly, we're co-creating values. And I'll give you these three examples just to leave you with this thought, because I know we're nearly up in time. Amazon has its flywheel, right? And we all understand the Amazon flywheel. If you're a merchant, you spend more, it grows, right? Notion as a flywheel, which is I was looking yesterday, like there's 30,000, 300,000 templates that have been built by the community in Notion. So you build your template in Notion, all of a sudden, you're getting value, giving value, and Notion's getting value, and the thing kind of grows. But actually, the AI is probably the biggest flywheel going, which is one, it gives us value, it helps us to do our job. But every time we interact with it, we're feeding it back with knowledge and insights and information, and it actually gets better and better over time. And I think the question I'd ask everybody and some of the companies I work with is, where's our flywheel? We got to have for value creation. Doing it on your own is kind of like the old model, like create a piece of software and give it to you. But actually, if we can get the user base to co-create that value, I think that's where we're going to end up, or where the most successful companies will be. So agree or disagree on that.
Brendan, you should see what I feed to OpenAI. I'll just give you the opposite of value creation. I'm guessing you can imagine.
So I don't know, but do you agree? Do you think that's feels like where we're at now is this movement from a company just giving you stuff and you use it and get some outcomes to actually maybe especially with AI that we can work on things together. So like this conversation for me, I can prepare slides, but I got far more value out of this by the conversation we've just been having, right, than actually me just shipping content.
I love that you're we're even thinking about this moment in time for commerce. I really think it's a reflection point for us, or an inflection point. And that's just how I'm viewing it right now. There's different parts of the industry. I'd encourage you to listen to Sarah McVitie and Dressipy if you want to figure out what's going on in the fashion industry. Like, she's reported on the fact that I think it's something like 60% of all fashion that goes to landfill is planned production, as in planned to go to landfill. So this idea of sustainability in fashion is an absolute fallacy. Sarah is a brilliant writer on it, and her technology is based around merchandise and selection and future planning and so on. But there are certain data points that are out there. I loved your last slide on Adobe and the subscription economy, Brendan. I thought that was just such a brilliant observation in general. It puts pains to a lot of people's business ideas. I'd say if you went down to one of the local pubs in Dublin tomorrow and presented that, you'd kill a few dreams.
Yeah. I think we're there. I think we're getting close. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Actually, if you do decide to do that, wear a body cam, Brendan. I'd just love to see the reactions. It'd be amazing.
I'll take it. I'll bring a taser. We're allowed to have tasers in Ireland now.
All right.
I just think that what Brendan has highlighted today, I think, is the shift that's happening in software. And the biggest challenge that I believe that's going to be happening in the next 2 to 5 years is that in order for businesses to succeed, you need data, but the data is not necessarily in databases, nor is it on the web. So I see a world where AI adoption will be something similar to how APIs were adopted, in the sense that it's going to become requirements in order for businesses to succeed. And I think the value creation slide that you just mentioned is the fact that in order for these businesses to scale, they don't have a moat. Let's just be honest here. These AI businesses don't have a moat unless they provide tools that people can use with their data. And I think, for me, what I keep thinking on while I was watching this presentation that you did, Brendan, and what Carlos asked you was, I would pay top dollar this week to be in a fly on the wall in Silicon Valley with Sam Altman basically saying, this is code red. What happened for him to say that I don't want you guys to focus on all these ancillary stuff. We need to focus on ChatGPT. I know there's a million answers for it, but this session basically makes me think about the value that Evolve does, in the sense that, and I know this is some behind the scenes conversations that I most probably shouldn't be talking about, but I think this is the verticalized knowledge that I think makes this community really special, in the sense that it's clear that Brendan has thought about this, and I wouldn't say your slides were spectacular, in the sense that they forced me to think about, what does the slide mean? Generally, people just see slides and you talk over the slides, where this actually, forced me to think. There, I said it.
Just, can I throw one final point, because I know I talk loads, but there was a discussion on WhatsApp yesterday, Brendan. You know some of the guys involved, Gordon, Dean McElwee, and people like that. We were talking about the challenge with LLM platforms and where they're all going and who's got value and who doesn't, and is it all a fallacy? But if you look at what OpenAI have done more than any other technology, I think probably since, I don't know, Amazon, it's a little bit drastic, but sorry, let's say Facebook or WhatsApp, the amount of adoption they've got at a consumer level is forcing their hand to make innovation seem like the greatest lever that they have to keep us all interested and keep that utility in our pocket. Like Perplexity are about 10% of their overall user base. DeepMind, or you go to any of them, like there's so many LLMs out there, but what they have is very unique in terms of their distribution. You talk to someone's granny, you got to talk to any person in any corner of the world, they've almost all heard about ChatGPT. So the notion that, their value could be eroded quickly by someone like Google, but there has not been technology or landing in the last number of years, last decade at least, that has driven a consumer adoption in the way that they have. And that's a huge value. And that's why I think, Hendrik, they've got this code red, because innovation for them is coming in so many different ways. And we tend to talk about it from a business lens, yet we all use it in our everyday lives now, the way we have been using Google for such a long time. So as much as it pains me to say it, it still has a long way to go before it hits a height to some of the other tech companies. But I can see how Sam Altman would push the code red button, because innovation is now the thing that they have to be seen to be leading all of the time.
Makes sense.
All right. So, gents, very cool to have you, but specifically you, Brendan.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan.
Thanks very much for all the knowledge and all the the wisdom you shared today. Category design is a topic that I love, and I try to study in as much as I can. So thank you very much. And time to sell. So if people want to know more about Brendan Hughes and what's the best way, of course, we're going to promote your book, as I told you in private. Excuse me. And share in the put the links on YouTube. But for whoever's watching this on LinkedIn as well, and other channels, our YouTube channel, what's the best way to get to know more about your work?
So, well, find me on LinkedIn, right? I'm there, fairly busy. So Brendan Hughes, you'll find me easily, or go to gtmedge.ai, and you'll find a free copy of the book if anyone wants to get access to it, either digitally or I'll post it out to people for a free review on Amazon.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Let's do it. Brendan, thank you.
Thanks,
Gents,
Brendan.
thank you, Hendrik.
Thanks, Vinny. Thanks, Hendrik.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, James.
Ciao.
Ciao.